Right, so now we can move on to the actual undercarriage legs themselves. Pretty straightforward the way they go. The only little problem is, and if we bring you in here nice and close, you can see what I mean. We've got a massive problem with ejector pin marks. Now, whoever designed this and went through, as you can see, we've got massive ejector pin marks all over this. We've got them at the top here, down, 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 and even on the bottom. And just to cap it off, we've even got them on both sides. Okay, so a couple of things we can do. If they were shallow, I'd sand them. I'd get in here with the little mini sanding drill like this, or if they're slightly raised, and I'll just sand them off, just to take care of them just like so. Like that one's a little one, and I feel that that one's can be done, just taken out like that. Okay, so these ones here though, way too big. Easiest, quickest way to do this one, to be honest. Touch super glue, this is the thicker stuff, okay, pop it in, and then all we do, grab it on a cocktail stick, okay, and just tap it in each hole, so you're completely covering the hole altogether, so you're left with a little pool, if you like. Just go around on the ball like that, in with a touch of kicker. Okay, and just keep moving it round, a little bit of a blow, and then just give that a second to start to dry off. When it's dried off, it will look something like this, and then you can come along, thin sanding sticks are always handy for this, and you can just blend them in then. So starting with the coarse side, don't push down, let the file do all the work, then come along with a smoother one, same on the others, and just work your way around and just roll it circles all the way round, and that way if you have got any little edges, perhaps the seam lines where the two went together, things like that, you can just smooth them out. So the legs themselves go together pretty easy, just follow the instructions on there like that until you're left with something like this. Okay, next up you've got the little spring areas, so what you can do, these should push down and in, so we're just going to give them a push down. There's one, and they sort of lock in, there's a little tabs in there, so we can do two like this. Make sure you're on the cross cut. When we say cross cut, as you'll see, you've got one, a top one and a lower one, and then you should find they should literally come together, something like that. Once they're in, touch of extra thin, just to lock them all into position, okay, because we're not going to want them moving around, just like that. Then what you've got is these two little legs on the back, and if you look at the back here, what you'll find is, when you bring it just a little bit, you've got, this will fit square into the rear part in here. So if we put just a touch of glue in there first, this will lock this in, and then the two legs come up, so it just fits in just like that. Touch of glue just each side, just to hold them in. Same thing, there is our gear done. Wheels themselves, obviously we've got tyres to go on these, so we're not too worried about it, but the hub's pretty straightforward, just sandwich all together. But eventually what will happen is this will come along, hopefully, something just like that. That's our wheel done, all ready for painting. Okay, right, you join us back, and we've had a bit of a catastrophe. Basically what I was doing was, I was just about to button up the actual main canopy area here, which is about to fall off. So I was installing the actual, the gun sight and everything. I was masked up the front canopy, all to be fitted on and everything. So I thought I'd just do a quick check to make sure, final check, that all the lighting and everything else is all working on par. Trouble is, I turned on the lights, and lo and behold, one of the navigation lights, which is actually here, which is the port one, wasn't working. Quick inspection in, I had a fracture. I've got it right here. I've got the cable just hanging here. I'd already buttoned this up and closed this as well, so I've had to open up this bottom air vent as well. But basically what happened is, and to this moment I haven't got a clue how it happened, but it's obviously pinched and it's snapped, so that's caused a bit of a problem. So now it's a case of, right, okay, how the hell am I going to thread this through? You might remember we've pumped this entire join seam full of super glue and things like that to try and sort of beef it up and strengthen it up and everything else. Obviously, you know you can't really get anything in between this wheel well trying to fit it through. So at this point, it was like, right, okay, now do we do it without navigation lights and everything else? But never to be one to you know, give up and fail at these points. It's a case of, right, okay, let's just sort of work through the problem and see how we can fix it. So if we just clear some of this mess away. The way I'm going to do this is, we installed, if you remember, very cleverly on my part, I might add, he says, fluking this, that metal, the clear plastic tube which runs into this joint here and right the way along the wings. Okay. Now, at the time, obviously, they were there for strengthening and to protect the actual fibre optics itself from the super glue. In hindsight, that is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, because now what we can do, we can drill in. I have to be a bit careful, we've got super glue all over the place down here. We can drill in just in here. I'll just mind the super glue out of the way, because I had this out earlier. We're just going to move this. I'll stick my hand in it. What we're going to do is drill in this wheel well just down in here, okay, and the idea is we're going to get in here and open up. So we've been in here with a needle pin vise just to make a small little hole. So it's a bit tricky to get this at an angle you guys can see it, but there's the word. So I'm just using this now to open it up. Little lifesaver, this drill. So I'm hoping now, there we go, that's opened up quite nicely. And what we can do, we can make a panel to overcut that. And I'm hoping, and we can just about see, the plastic tube that we fed in goes in to about there. So what we're going to do now, because I'm slightly concerned about obviously fitting this through, I'm going to use a thicker fibre optic so I know it's not going to break. Okay. So we're just going to open this up, hoping now it's sliding down this tube. And then hoping, and here it comes, you might be able to see it just down in here. There it is, folks. This is the fibre optic cable coming out in here. Okay, so we're going to make another little hole. Okay, obviously the light is a bit of a problem for you guys seeing here, but we're going to make another little hole in here. Just like so. And what we'll do is we'll just put a small one in for the moment. With the drill, just make it a little bit bigger. Tiny bit more. Just in like that, and then we're hoping what we're going to do here is feed the fibre optic cable in this hole, and hoping amongst hopes, get back a little bit, see if we can just push it halfway in. There we go, just this. Need 10 hands for this job. And we're hoping this will fit. And then out it comes. You might be able to see if we get some proper light in here, guys. The camera. If you just tilt the camera up a minute, we can get some light over here. And out comes our nice cable out of here. So we can poke him through a bit more. And out is our cable now fed through. So there we have both ends of the cable. We can rejoin it up, okay, reinstall it. light it up, and we're back to square one. And what we'll do is we'll paint this silver just down here to take care of that. But I must admit, this is one of those areas where I thought, oh my god, how am I going to get around this problem? But it's one of those things, you think, right, it's going to have no lights, and then you have a quick think about it, and you say, right, let's work the problem, let's make it work, let's find a way to get it all fixed up and working again. So we've got two options. We can either put that thin one that was obviously all pre-made up and join it onto the end of this one, which we can do quite easily just by holding it in here and gluing them together with a little bit of super glue, or we can just butt this one straight up to the LED like we did with the others, and away we go. So really personal choice, problem averted. So what we can do is really get back on, and unfortunately I've just dented this gun sight down again, so we're going to need a tiny bit of super glue just to get this gun sight back up into position. So we're just going to pop a tiny bit of glue, and I've just missed where I was aiming for, which is never a good thing. Okay, so just bring this up a touch, and then what we'll do, we use a cotton bud to get rid of where we've got too much. Okay, just in like that. Let's square up this gun sight to how we want it. Square kick up, purely for speed. In. And then what we can do is we can pop along in a moment and just pop a drop of black paint around there to fix that gun sight. But that's the gun sight all in there now. Hopefully, to Christ, that will be the last bit of the actual taking care of the fibre optics. So what we can do, we can come along, a bit of flat black, and then we can attach this screen onto the front, on just like on here, okay, and then what we can do, we can go around now and just button up all these little things. So what we can do is a little bit of rescribing to go around and put the panel lines and back in, a little bit of re-riveting, obviously, as we said before. I'm not going to worry about installing the engine and the cowl in the moment. We're going to do all those a little bit afterwards when we're all happy of how it's all fitting and everything else. But what we need to do is get these gun areas buttoned up for the moment. To be honest, I've made that a mess now, cutting through and filling and scribing. These are so full of dust and that I'm probably going to respray. So all we'll do, we'll mask them up afterwards and do them. So for the moment, I'm probably just going to go straight over the top and not worry about it. We've been around and obviously checked all the seams absolutely everywhere on this one to make sure it's all very nice and smooth and there is no problems with it now. So really, we can start moving on. Okay, so we're really getting there now with this one. Obviously what we've had to do is go around and rescribe a lot of these areas, and especially obviously the windbreak. Now the actual real aircraft, you look yourself, they're quite hefty panel lines, so don't worry if you get a bit carried away putting them in. But the thing is, when you're going around, some of them are very, very soft as you go over them. So have a look round and you might notice some of them are just a little bit really heavy, then they go light. It might be worth just evening them up a little bit. So all we do is pop the last one in along here. So just pop that one in. Scriber might be handy. Here we go. So all we're doing, usual thing, placing the scriber and drag. And we're clicking into the panel line. And there we go, that's that one done. But so I've gone all the way around, same with the bottom. Now I've got to re-rivet these, and to be honest, I'll use a needle in a vise, and I'll just pinprick them in because go around, and obviously some of them have got little bits of filler in it and everything else like that. The big thing, obviously, is this flap system. Now if I bring you in just a little bit closer. Now this flap system here, as I said, we've spoken about it before, it's really, really complicated. For something it should be quite straightforward. We've got these little photo etch parts, you might remember when we put them in, which click in. Getting them to line up and be the right widths and sizes is one thing. So the thing is, when you go along and do it like we've done this one here, we've gone along and used little bits of plastic peg, as you can probably see, just down there in these. Now it's deliberately too long because I've been using it to adjust them and to make sure they're all okay, but these actually work okay. Now it looks great, you can probably see it there, it actually expands and closes and everything else. The trouble is, when you look at them from this position, we've got this gap, this step up here, but the thing is, when obviously you raise them up, it almost goes and you haven't got it. But the thing is, I've been playing with it and trying to adjust it and bring it into the right position and up a little bit higher and things like that, and it's really, really hard to do it. This one here is just flapping around in the breeze at the moment. So what I'm probably going to do is set it in the down position like this, okay, and the same with this one, and then I'm going to super glue them in place to hold them in there, and then that way when we do come over to the underside and we've got these tabs down in here, we can cut them to the right length and we'll put a drop of super glue in these hinges to lock it in. But the thing is, for some reason they just do not line up. When you look at photos of the real aircraft, it just seems to be, oh look, there they are and everything else. Now I've done the obviously 1/48 scale ones, obviously the Tamiya one comes to mind, and for some reason it just works. You put them in, no problem at all, up or down, and away you go. Because these are movable, it just throws completely everything, and the geometry of it is just all over the place. So what I'm going to do is make a best guess scenario of how they should be. Once I've got them locked into position and I'm looking right, I'm going to super glue them in place, and that will be the end of it. So we're going to have them in the dropped position like this one over here, and we'll glue this one in place just like that. So really that takes care of this actual section itself. And this part of the build, and really the horrible bits. Fibre optics, obviously now we've got it all sorted out, is in there, and we've just got the cable bunched down here. So what we can actually do now is go around, as I say, rescribe and just touch it up everywhere. Make sure all the joints are really in the nice place. We've gone around and obviously we've done the gear now, so we're not going to fit those, we're going to put them all in afterwards, but we're all there. So I'm not going to worry so much about this engine part for the front at the moment. We are literally just going to pop the actual canopy on the back here, like so, okay, and when we've got that locked in like that, we can spray it as this part, and then the engine, because it's going to be open, we can spray that as separate and bring it all together. But things we've got to do is a little round one here at the front and make sure that one's put in. Obviously a lot of this detail around the front is a little bit obliterated, and put the panel lines as they curve over and everything else like that. So I'm going to carry on getting this ready and all prepped up and ready for the spray bay. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to getting this one all finished, but there's a couple of little bits we sort of need to do to get together. A few of them, obviously, we've gone round and we've rescribed and we've repinned. So obviously, just to recap, going round, obviously, scribing we've covered before, and riveting detail, literally there's a couple of ways of doing riveting detail we've spoken about. You can either use like a riveting wheel. Sometimes at this scale it's a little bit clumsy. But the way I like to do it, I've got just a needle in a little pin vise here, and I just go along and just stab exactly over where the other ones were. And that way you can go around and put in all your riveting detail, perhaps where it's been sanded out or obliterated and things like that. So that's that one on. Now, up the top here, we did a lot of sanding work just up here to get rid of, obviously, this seam that runs through, and there's a little bit of a spread on it caused by the cockpit. So we used quite a hefty bit of super glue down in there. Now, the thing is, when we were going around and doing all this, as you can see, we took out the little plate. There's a circle plate on top here for the fuel tank and the oils and everything that goes down into this section down in here. So what we're actually going to do now is put it back in. Now you might be able to see I've done it lightly in there already. What I've basically done is I've got one of these little guys. Now this is normally for cutting circles in paper, things like that. It's got a little blade on it, as you can imagine. It's very sharp, it's got a little tiny needle. What we did, we just basically measured out the centre, put a tiny little dot in the middle so it's got something to rest into, because obviously this is very hard because it's super glue, okay? And then we pop this in, and then we go around it, first of all clockwise, and obviously re-put in the panel, okay, because that's using the cutting part of the blade, okay. And then what we do now, we go backwards, and what this is, this will actually make a, he says, it takes a bit of concentration, this will actually re-put in a panel line, because it's working a little bit like a P-cutter backwards. And if you just gently go round, you'll make a nice little trench all the way in there, just like that. And you put it back in, and that's how you put a circle. And obviously, because it's on a curve as well, it would be an absolute nightmare to try and do it with a P-cutter, to try and curve around it as well. But that gives us a very nice one put back in. And obviously, we've got to do the top one, and I've just put it in. We've got to do the riveting detail going across there and things like that. But that shows that one going back in, and this one down here, we've put a panel line back in there. There again, you're going to need to put the rivets in there as we go through. So that's just a sort of a quick tip on putting that one together. The other thing we've got to do at the same time is literally we've just got to put on the little activator arms and things which go onto the actual wing tips and things. So we've got these here, tiny little gits. So all we're going to do, we just put a little bit of glue in the rear. And we just sink that one in. And then these just push down in the hole so it makes it look like it's on a moving spring. So there we go, it's got a tiny bit more super glue in this rear part just to make sure that's settled in. Tiny bit on the front. That's that one, and then we've got these which are going to fit just on the edge here. They're going to go on. I'm going to fit in. Let me just check the references how these actually sit in, because it does seem to be a bit of a way with the fairy, shall we say, on how this actually goes. So actually what happens is it's going to push down actually right inside this groove down here. Now the trouble being, say it sits on this edge here and goes down in there, but the trouble is where we've shall we say modified the area, because obviously the gun bay is going in there, it's a little bit too long, this one. So what we're going to do, we're just going to trim a tiny bit off the end. I know it's around about 1mm off the end here. Test fit it in again. What we'll do, if I move this around, you can see what we're up to. You're going to need a little bit more. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have one down, one up situation. A little bit more. Tiny bit more. It's probably about 2.5mm that I've taken off of here now. And there we go, that one will sit in there now. So we just take, only glue in this end, just the one end, tiny bit of extra thin, just on there. Poke this little guy in, seat that in just like that. A little bit more glue. You can see it's in here just like that. Tiny bit more glue just on the top. Okay, so we won't touch the inside of it, we'll just leave it like that. But what it has done is just depressed it a little bit. You might be able to see the angle that we've actually got there. It's just depressed it down a little bit. So it takes care of it just like that. So what I'm going to do now, I've got the ones to go on the rear. We're going to put these on, which will lock these into position. At the moment, they're all completely loose. This one over here, because we've pushed this side down, this one will have slightly up. So we'll shorten this one a little bit and lock it slightly in the up position. That way, it just gives a little bit of deflection, as if the control column's perhaps been pushed to one side. And obviously, we've still got to fit the control column in there. So when we do it, we'll put it in the same position. So if we're leaving these slightly down, perhaps, then obviously we'll have the control column forward a little bit and slightly to the left. So it just all sort of marries in and everything else. We've got a little bit of room on the rudder as well, so we're going to have that slightly deflected, as if perhaps it's blown in the breeze or something else like that. So we'll get those bits all done. We've got to still fix this little one down here, so I'm going to do a tiny little bit of plastic card just along that edge. As I say, I'm going to go right the way over these. I'm going to mask these up and we're going to spray them all afterwards, which in hindsight is what I should have done in the first place. Once we've got those bits on, we can cover up this canopy area. We've got the canopy to go on, and then once that's on, we can get some primer on it and start working on the paintwork. Okay then, so we're all re-riveted. We've put these tail planes on, as I said, and all the rest of it. Tiny little bit of plastic card down here to fix that problem. Now it's quite rough everywhere. It needs a good clean up the plastic, because we've been handling this one so much, it's going to be covered in fingerprints and all the nasties and bits like that. So what we've done for the moment, we just put this canopy on because I want to spray it black so it's showing through from the inside to be black. Now, what you might see down here, got a little bit of the putty, which is Mr. Surfacer, running around this front. Now, what I actually did was I mixed a tiny little bit of black oil paint in with it, just to stain the Mr. Surfacer, if you like, to make it black so it wouldn't show up down there. But we've got to do the rest of it. So what we're going to do is just grab a bit of kitchen towel. Okay, because obviously the bench is going to need a good clean off anyway. But what we're doing, so you've got a small gap at the front, but that's because it's just a loose fit for the moment. So we're taking some normal flat black, some XF1 flat black. Okay, good old shake. And then we've got our airbrush. Let me bring you out a bit. Airbrush just like this. Okay, just check it's neat paint, straighten the colour cut, just like that. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to hold the top literally like this, and we're just going to spray the bars. Now the reason for doing this now is because we're using the blue. If you used to put the blue just straight onto this, it would look opaque and see-through. Okay, so by doing this, it will just blacken it up. Also, twofold thing, we can have a good look at some of these joins at the same time. So we'll just spin this round and do the other half. Spraying the black on these areas here. So from the inside, it will look black barring as it would, and then on the outside, obviously not. So then on the outside, obviously it will be blue. Okay, so there we go. We've done that. We can let that dry. What I want to do is have a good look at some of these areas. First of all, obviously this nose section. I want to make sure that there's no sink marks in it. And where I've re-riveted this front area, I want to have a good look to see if it's all flush and flat and everything else like that. So if I bring you in, as that's repressurizing. So what we do, we're having a look down here, and you might be able to see it when you catch it in the light, because it's where you can see the riveting all looks okay. They're all roughly the same size as what we're trying to find here. And then obviously as you work back this area across the front, you can see the panel line goes all the way through, and the riveting is all okay on that nose section. So we're happy how that is. So what we're going to do is just do a couple of others just to check. Now the main one obviously is these wing joins we want to do as well. So what we're going to do, we'll just spray one of these in to have a look to see what we've got. We want to make sure we can see obviously a panel line so we can follow, make it a little bit bigger. If I just dry this down a second, we can make sure we can see it. Any riveting detail is all okay. So what we do is just pop up and do these rivets here. There's that one. Do this one as well. So I can show you here. So the same thing, what we're doing, we're really just having a good look. I try and catch this in the light so you can see it. But there we go. We're just trying to do it so you can see it in the light. There we go. You can see that panel line in the light. Look, that's going to be the brake for the wing brake. And then obviously as it comes forward around the front, you can probably see it in the light. Looking okay. The riveting all looks all right as well. You can probably see it in there. That one's a little bit wet. Same thing. We're just making sure it's all okay. Obviously we want the panel lines in there, and they're all right. So that's one of the major areas where I was concerned about it looking pretty nasty. So what we'll do, we'll check the rear ones as well. And immediately a little thing down here, I've got a little bit of a filler mark, it's still raised, so I need to sand that down and make that nice again. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to check a few of the areas, and if you've got an area which is a little bit scuffed up perhaps, you know, where you've got some scratch marks in your plastic, give it a blow over with this, and then when you sand it back, obviously it will be nice and flat and everything else like that. So we'll do the same for the underside, for these big areas where we had to chop about, obviously for the gun bays. Same thing, we're popping these in here, and we want to make sure it's all nice. If it's looking really rough, especially down the back of this gun bay one and not looking nice, then now's the time to sand it smooth and everything. But this will give us a nice check to make sure we're all okay. Now there's two things I just want to talk about here. First of all, I've just poked all the wiring in, and I've got a cable just hanging here. I know if I pull that I can slide all the cabling out without messing up too much in there. Okay, and then secondly, these here. Now we've got exhaust stacks to go in there, which I've made up already, which to be honest I've just put them over to one side to dry, which is out of arm's reach. But basically they're going to just fit in here. I'll show you how I did that a little bit later on. But that's fine for those. So we'll just check these seam lines down the base here, around the tail, everything else. If we're happy with how that's looking and all the riveting's all matching up and looking even, everything else like that, then we can move on. If not, I'll adjust it now and take care of those. And then what we can do, we'll get this entire spray bay cleared away, all nice and clear down here. I've got the extractor which is just behind your camera there. I'm going to have that on when we're spraying because it's a big one, and we'll spray right in front of you.